Hello and welcome to the Japan Archives, a podcast where we'll be delving into the histories and mythologies from Japan's long history. I'm your host, Thomas.
And I'm your co-host, Heather. We'll also be reading a poem for you every week and giving a little history about the poet who wrote it. Ikimashou!
Hey guys, welcome back to the Japan Archives, episode 34. Now, today we are going to talk about the Oni, like we mentioned last week, and a few days ago, I guess, on our bonus episode. Go a bit more into their histories, their appearances, what people think they are, and I also found 4 different examples of Oni, and I can tell you like the story behind them. But I guess for Heather, before we start, I was going to ask you, how many episodes have we already had that have touched on the Oni?
Oh no, you have to give me a quiz and I have to think. We had Momotaro, we had Setsubun, there's 2. Those are the early episodes. Has it been about 6?
I don't know.
Oh, I thought
I was
for
just
sure.
wondering to
I was like, I'm ready. What's the answer? Oh, so we have to go back and look.
From what I can remember, I think we have had 4 so far. So we've had Setsubun, we've had the Kimon episode,
Mm.
we've had Momotaro, and we also had the 1 bonus episode, bonus number 3, Zenki and Goki. So far, yeah, about 4 episodes where we've kind of talked about specific Oni stories. But yeah, like I said, today I want to talk a bit more about them generally, but then also at the end give a few Oni tales. I have been quite selective about the Oni tales as usual. There's quite a lot, so I've chosen a select few. I've chosen 4 for today. But what do you already know about the Oni, Heather?
The word oni, I think, doesn't have maybe specific direct translation because I've seen them referred to as like demon or devils or spirits, and so it's not quite direct because they have different aspects of personality for the oni. Some are more mischievous, some have done some good things, some have done some bad things, and some have repented of their things and promised to never do them again. So as far as the word translation, and they occur in, well, a few episodes that we've done, but in lots of different stories. And they occur in Japanese pop culture, they occur in manga, and they occur in anime and movies and everywhere. And there's pictures of Oni used in advertisement. I think it's basically the gist of it.
Okay, so you have a good base knowledge of the
Hmm.
Oni. If you're ready, I will get into the bits and pieces about the Oni in general. So, like you said, you were right about the name. It's been translated over time variously as like demons, ogres, or even devils. And we can find reference to the Oni all the way back as far as the 8th century. There are some believe that perhaps they were actually former Shinto kami, so Shinto
Oh.
deities, who fell on perhaps hard times or fell from grace. When it comes to Oni as well, they can be both male and female Oni, as we saw with Zenki and Goki. But stories surrounding female Oni are far rarer than those of their male counterparts. A bit more in regards to the word Oni itself, we can find the word Oni in some of the oldest Japanese texts. So the Kojiki, the Nihongi, as well as some of the local gazetteers known as the Fudoki. However, the pronunciation as it stands is a purely Japanese construct, and it actually wasn't used until the Heian period. And the kanji for Oni can also be pronounced in various other ways. It can be pronounced as ki, if used in other words, such as the Hyaki Yagyo, which can be translated as the procession of 100 demons or the procession of 100 Oni. And into the modern day, the word Oni is generally used now as a general word for things that are scary, basically to scare children A bit like in the West where your parents would tell you there is a monster under your bed kind of thing.
No, they're not supposed to tell you there's a monster under your bed.
You
Oh, that's
never had
terrible.
you never had that?
My parents didn't tell me, I just assumed as a child there was probably a monster, but no one told me. Like, do parents specifically tell their children there's monsters, I guess, to keep them in bed?
Well, not
That's
my
oh
not
my
my
gosh.
parents, but, like, it was stay in
Okay.
bed because if you climb out of bed, the monster will grab your leg.
No, didn't get that one. Oh my goodness.
Oh, okay.
No. Is that a cultural difference maybe?
Maybe just a little. Anyway, so we obviously now see the Oni as an entity in themselves, but actually in the past we can see that the word was actually used more of a catch-all term for supernatural creatures or yokai in general. And basically the word had the older meaning of signifying monstrous things in all shapes and sizes, not just a singular type of creature. But that did all slowly change over time until they eventually became like a yokai or a creature into themselves. Some believe the origins of the word oni can also be found of a signifier of an epidemic. And actually, it's that the image of the oni later developed as a manifestation of the invisible and basically the worry of the spread of disease.
So, should we now perhaps get some soybeans and maybe do you think that would help? Just should we throw them outside? Oniwasoto. Oniwasoto.
As long as you wash your hands afterwards,
Okay.
I guess it doesn't hurt to throw some soybeans at this point. Historically, there are many various depictions of the Oni, and obviously, depending on who drew them, who was imagining them at the time, they can vary widely in appearance. But at least in the modern day, they've now taken more of a common appearance that are easy to recognize. So, the modern day appearance, at least, would be you're going to see a creature that's human like and also male. Like I said, it's very rare to see a female Oni. Now, this human like creature is going to be very large and powerful, sporting either a red, blue, black, or yellow face. They're going to have clawed hands and sharp, protruding fangs. And they're also going to have horns on their heads, and they will be carrying an iron club. And when it comes to their clothing, they are going to be wearing a loincloth made of tiger skin.
That appearance, was watching some show, some children's cartoon last week, and when I was sitting and I had to be stuck, um, and that blue tiger skin, the kids were they turned blue and they had the tiger skin for their outfit, so that is definitely used even now in, like, cartoons and things, or I guess it would be anime.
I've never watched any anime yet in Japan that has actually featured Oni.
I don't know if this was this I don't think it was Doraemon, but it was, like I don't know if it technically be consider because it's a children's program for, like, small children. I
Mm,
don't know, I would say cartoon, but that's the American but I don't think I've seen I don't know, I haven't seen so many anime, to be honest. But in the cartoon, definitely, because it was on the children's, channel.
I see, I see. So, of course, it doesn't always end there when it comes to their appearances. When you look more into the historical depictions of them, or basically just other common elements of them, you can find creatures. They will always have like strong associations with lightning. They'll also have a perchance for eating people. That's eating people is like a big part of their diet. And also, when it comes to their hands and feet, their hands will only have three fingers and their feet will only have three toes. And in some rare instances, we even have depictions of Oni with three eyes on their head. The earliest images. So we talked about the earliest mentionings of them in Japanese text, but the actual earliest images we have are from 12th century hell scrolls from the Buddhist faith, and these are known as the Jigoku Zoshi. And likely later on, these images also became influenced by the god of thunder, known as Raijin, which is likely why they then gained their associations with lightning and thunder. Overall, these creatures, when you try and find the origins of them, they don't actually, you can't actually find them centered in one place. But like with a lot of things in Japan, where they incorporate a lot of like Chinese beliefs, Chinese faiths, and things from abroad, The Oni can be like a mixture of Chinese, Japanese, Buddhist, as well as other sources all fused together, mixed, blended, and then manifested into what became the Oni that we know today. Their human-like appearance as well at times has actually helped them to be depicted in like people's minds as a form of like anti-human, like an image
Mm.
for the bad and the immoral acts that people can actually do and carry out. Of course, I think you said at the start of the episode, there are like a few exceptions. Some of the Oni we see like are quite humorous in how they act, or they can even be foolish at times. But again, these are very much anomalies in the collection of Oni depictions and stories, basically because the Oni are seen as a symbol of like the negative human. They also have strong links to like people who are seen as outsiders, people who are like marginalized and feared by old Japanese society. So, for example, you have the Shugendo faith, which was founded by Ozunu, who we've definitely talked about before. And even strangely enough, they had associations with Japanese blacksmiths who would live out in the countryside. They would also live on the outskirts of villages, and they were feared in a way due to their apparent supernatural abilities to shape metal. So, at least for now, that is what I uncovered from the books I have, from the research I did online about the development of the Oni, their strange origins, and their appearances and things. So now, like I said, I found 4 different Oni tales, which I would like to tell you and the listeners. I'll put images of all of these creatures up on the site with the show notes. The images I will put up in the show notes, at least for this episode, are all going to be by the same guy known as Toriyama Sekien, who made like a giant encyclopedia of different supernatural creatures. The first one that I've chosen is said to have been not the general for the Oni, but at least a general of the Oni. So that potentially shows us that they had some form of hierarchy. At least they weren't all like the same ranking. Now, this Oni is better known as Shutendoji, or if we translated his name into English, it would be the sake drinking boy. Is this an Oni you're familiar with?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I was just looking at the kanji in the notes, and I see the kanji for sake.
So, in regards to Shutendoji, the story goes that the capital of Japan at the time was being plagued by demons, or Oni, depending on your translation. And the maidens of the city were actually being taken by these creatures. And in addition to this, the daughter of one of the government officials of the city had also been taken. Outraged by everything that was happening, the official summoned a man known as Minamoto no Yorimutsu to try and rid the city of this demon plague so that he could end their sorrows. Minamoto gathered up a group of trusted men and set out to meet the general of these Oni in an attempt to try and stop them. Heading to the slopes of Mount Oe, where he is said to have lived. As they climb the mountain, they're actually approached by 3 strange old men who kind of appear out of nowhere as they're climbing up the mountain. And these men actually approach Minamoto and his group, and they gift them many large barrels of sake. The interesting thing about the sake, they say, is that this particular type is quite special and poisonous to the Oni to some regard, but it is also of great use to men. This works out well in the end for them because Shutendoji is said and believed to have been a great fan of sake, and so they accept this gift and take it with them to the peak of the mountain. And upon reaching the summit, they actually find that Shutendoji lives in a palace made completely of iron. Minamoto and his men all enter into the palace, all of them disguised at the time as Buddhist monks. They are welcomed into the palace by Shutendoji, who during the day takes on the appearance of a human being, and he invites them to sit at his table and join him and the other Oni for a large feast. The feast, however, turns out to be a feast of human flesh, and so Minamoto and his men pretend to eat the food as they don't wish to anger Shutendoji or arouse any suspicion. And they also gift him these giant barrels of sake, which he accepts gladly, and he and the rest of the Oni begin to drink them in earnest. Soon, due to the sake being quite poisonous to the Oni, they all fall into a deep slumber as night draws in. As the moon rises, Shutendoji then transforms into his Oni self, and it's said that he is a giant 10-foot tall demon. And as Shutendoji is there before them sleeping, Minamoto and his men then decide to attack, slaughtering the Oni and beheading Shutendoji. Shutendoji, being a general of the Oni, will not die easily, and it's said that his head, even after being detached, it tried to bite and attack Minamoto. However, it was too late, and he and all of his Oni men were defeated. Afterwards, Minamoto and his group descended further into the Iron Palace and unfortunately come across some rather gross findings. They find many, many piles of pickled human flesh, and they actually find a lot of women who have been previously kidnapped from the capital who have unfortunately had their limbs amputated. I suppose luckily these women are still alive. They did not die from their amputations. And continuing their search, they eventually come across the official's daughter, and so they take her and all the other women with them, return to the capital as heroes.
Is there any information about the three men who approached them? Were they just random spirits? Just happened to be at the right place at the right time? Anything about them, or just happened to be lucky?
In regards to the three men that turn up to give them the sake, the story says that these three men were actually deities, and they were incarnations of the very gods to whom Minamoto and his men had actually been praying to before they departed on their journey.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
And after they had gifted Minamoto and his men the sake, they disappeared into thin air. The second tale is set in a temple known as Gangoji. Now, this temple is located in Nara, and the Oni in question actually has a name like Shutendoji did, and it is known as the Gagoze. The creature takes its name also from the name of the temple where it once resided. Now, it's said that one day there was a farmer who came across a thunder child during a storm. The farmer, taking pity on this creature, decides that he will not kill it, and so in thanks, the creature tells him that he would soon have a strong child. Soon after that, the farmer's wife gives birth to a son, who, for some strange reason, is also born with a snake around his head. As promised, the child grew up strong and actually became a monk at the nearby temple of Gangoji. And whilst there, the son learns that the monks here seem to die a lot, and they always seem to die close to the bell of the temple. And being brave and strong as the Thunder Child said he would be, he decides to go and investigate to try and find out what is actually killing all of these monks. And upon investigation, he finds the Oni, known as Gagoze, living near the bell. With his strength, he drags him from his home so it cannot kill monks anymore.
If the Oni gets displaced from their home, he I guess just runs away or has to find a new home, or since he's displaced from his home, couldn't kill them anymore, I guess.
I guess so. Like the implication I got from this story was very similar to you. Like it feels like he was ripped from his home and so he had to find another one. I feel that if the Gagoze was actually killed, the story would have said so. Like Shuten Doji, they explicitly say, "Oh, he was killed." But in this one, they don't. So I think, yeah, he was just sent packing and had to find a new place. Which does seem a bit strange when it's something that is killing innocent people. You think they would have maybe dealt with it in a different way, but that's just how the story goes.
Hopefully, he found a new place to live that did not involve killing people.
Hopefully, yeah. So the third one I found, interestingly, another Oni, but it's actually not from Japan. It's actually from China. And it said that he lived in the area of, I'm going to pronounce this horribly wrong, so I apologize. But he is said to have lived in the area of Angwo, in the mountains located there. This creature is known by the name of Sansei, which we can translate to being mountain spirit. If you come across this creature, you will find something that, like all other Oni, is humanoid in appearance, but one of the differences about this one is that it will only have one leg. We find references to this in a book known as the Wakan Sansai Zue, which is an encyclopedia from 1712, and it elaborates a little bit more on this creature, saying that if you should come across it, it will range from 90 to 120 centimeters tall, and that the 1 foot it actually does always faces the opposite way to its face. The favorite food, if you wish to feed them, is roasted stone crabs, and they often like to steal salt from woodcutters, according to the Chinese book known as A Record of Yongjia. The Wakan Sansai Zue also states that they are nocturnal and that they also enjoy eating frogs and toad. This creature will cause you to suffer from illnesses, or it will actually make your home catch fire should you attempt to attack them if you run across them. However, if instead the creature decides to attack you, if you shout the word Batsu, it will stop the creature and it will run away.
Is this like butts where it's like the X?
Yeah. So, like, no. Basically, shouting no at it will cause it to stop and run away.
Why wouldn't know? Why would you want to attack him? It doesn't. I mean, besides being it's very interesting appearance, but maybe it doesn't not so terrible. So salt from woodcutters. Japanese woodcutters use salt.
I don't know if Japanese woodcutters do, but I'm going to presume that Chinese woodcutters. Yeah, I'm going to assume Chinese woodcutters did, although I have no idea why a woodcutter would need salt.
My apologies for forgetting the origin of the story we were telling. That's right, it's Chinese origin. Oh gosh, but I don't know why you'd want to attack him. He's not so bad. He's not really hurting anyone. Just taking your salt. Give him a stone crab.
I think he falls into like the genre of those very rare exceptions to the Oni. He doesn't seem to actually do much. He's there, living in the mountains. If you come across him, leave him be and he won't hurt you.
Hide your salt if you're a
But if he
woodcutter.
does decide to hurt you, it's really easy to stop him.
Yeah.
So he's not that much of a threat as compared to other Oni, I suppose. So as we move on to the fourth and final one, so obviously the third one was a bit of an exception. So I decided for the fourth one to be something very similar. So I found one of the rare instances of a female Oni. This Oni is known as the Hashihime, so like the bridge woman, bridge female. And in fact, she's a bit of an exception, even when it comes to Oni, in that she did not start her life off as an Oni. She actually started off her life as a human being. This poor woman was actually desperate for love, but sadly, it said that her appearance was so bad that she would never be able to find another husband, and that her previous husband had actually left her for another woman. Day after day, she found herself slowly being consumed by jealousy and hatred. In the end, she decided to head to the Kifune Jinja shrine to pray to the god known as Kifune Daimyojin. And she actually stayed there for 7 days, praying day in and day out, desperate to actually be turned into what she called a living Oni. Daimyojin eventually takes pity on the woman and actually instructs her on how she can transform herself into this living Oni. And all she simply needed to do was soak herself in the nearby river known as Uji for 20 straight days. She then returns home and decides to tie up her hair in 5 separate horn like locks. She paints her face and body red and places an inverted iron trivet upon her head. Finally, to complete this look, she decides to bite down on a torch which was lit at both ends and holds it in her mouth before running straight from her home to the river. It was said that the very sight of her was enough to make people faint or even die from fear. And so, returning to the river, she bathed for 20 days until her transformation was completed. So, there you have it, 4 different Oni tales.
Yeah, you've picked out going back and just reviewing all of the stories that you did. Yeah, you picked 4 definitely different ones, and you even got a female Oni, which is there's not so many tales about them. So, and I'm actually that last one, you know, it's not many people who something bad happens to them and they decided to take matters into their own hands. And she knew what she wanted and she went for it and she was able to accomplish her dream of becoming an Oni. And also, I think I would be a little bit, freaked out if I saw someone painted in red and iron driven on a lit torch running toward the river. I think I would be a little concerned as well. But, I probably wouldn't have picked becoming an Oni, but, she took charge of her destiny, and that's pretty impressive in its own way.
I do wonder though what the story means when it says that she turned into a living Oni. I don't know if that's a translation thing or if that there is an implication that actually Oni are not living
Oh, there's
creatures in some
spirits,
regard.
right? Kind of like a well, there's kind of yokai, so they're not, human as far as having the, mortal lifespan. I don't know if they have like a longer lifespan or shorter lifespan or
True, and I have read other things where people say like comparing yokai to yurei, so like ghost is like yurei are a someone, whereas yokai are a something. So I guess they're unless yeah, they're not really living, they're more like manifestations of beliefs or fears.
I like everything you've done, but it's still that there's so much for me to digest just in this. Going from different spectrum of, the more, I guess, classic kind of feeling of Oni as far as, eating people and then killing the Oni to stop them, as opposed to like, so you only have one story in this example. So to be honest, there's just so much to oh, it sounds terrible to digest from this. So I feel like I'm gonna like think about this like several days later and go, oh, I wanted to say that, and of course I'll think about it too late. But I really enjoy this because I know a few stories about Oni, but these are ones I don't think I've actually heard the sake one, to be honest. After you read it, I don't think I've heard that one. So all of these are definitely new to me.
As long as you found them interesting and liked them, I guess that served its purpose, no?
I definitely enjoyed it. Hopefully everyone else will enjoy it too. But I think that was fun. Nice choices for today. Thanks for the Oni intro.
Thank you. So, what do you have for everyone then in today's literature corner?
Well, today I decided to go back to the Sakura song and to read the first verse of well, the official first verse, but not the historical first verse, but the first verse of the Sakura song, which was the one done in 1941 by the Ministry of Education. So I'm going to read that one today.
We still don't know why they did this, do we?
Possibly, I might have a theory now.
I'm intrigued by
I
your
have a theory,
theory.
but first I'm going to read the lyrics to you and see what you can pick out. And I feel like you'll be able to pick out most of it.
I will wait for your theory then. Okay, I have my pen, I have my paper. I am ready, I am all ears for you.
Sakura, Sakura. 野山も里も見渡つ限り、霞が雲か朝日に匂う。桜、桜、花盛り。So, Thomas, what were you able to pick out besides Sakura, Sakura?
So, if we exclude Sakura, like you said, there seem to be a lot of similar words to the verse you said last week. Potentially, I heard hana, so flowers, but I heard hana zakuri, so I wasn't quite sure what the zakuri part was. I heard kumo, so clouds again. I heard sato, but I wasn't sure if you were saying sugar. I heard tatsu, as in like the verb to stand. I heard also asahi, but I'm unsure if the Ministry of Education would use the name of a beer in their story, in their song. So I'm going to assume I heard that wrong. And I'm just going to ask you to please tell me and the listeners what the English is.
I did enjoy that. Yeah, Asahi has a few different meanings, but yes, it does come from a beverage company. They also make delightful bottled drinks, not just beer, but also make delightful bottled beverages. Okay, so one of it, I definitely then mispronounced it because if you heard just tatsu, um, yeah, I did miwatasu. Sorry, miwatasu. So I have to go back and read that again. All right, so and I said sato, and sugar, I've got to make sure that I'm pronouncing it right because I think sugar is sato. So sato is a different one, but you've heard this sato before. I've mentioned it before in another song. So yeah, actually, yeah, you did notice a lot of there's a lot of similar lyrics between the two. So I'll go ahead and I think you did really well. And I'll go ahead and give you the translation if you're ready. See what you got.
Yes, I'm ready.
Cherry blossoms in fields, mountains, and villages. As far as the eye can see, is it mist or clouds? Fragrant in the rising sun, cherry blossoms, flowers in full bloom.
What is your theory then for why they added this verse?
Okay, so and remember Sato, do you remember I mentioned this a long time, well, a few episodes ago. So like home.
The only Sato that's coming to mind right now is Furo Sato.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
Really? So
Yes.
the part of the going home song.
Okay, so my theory is around this time period, there were a lot of songs being written about like that Furosata, that home, Furosato, the home place, the feeling of going back home. And the lyrics in this has in fields, mountains, and villages. So it seems like because they had all of the other songs that were mentioning the villages and the home, that they made this verse to go along with the second to kind of go into that same theme for the other songs around that time period for the Ministry of Education. So that's my working theory. I'll do a little bit more research and see if I'm correct.
I like the theory.
And also, so as far as the Asahi, when I go to look at the kanji, it's the kanji for asa, which is morning, and he, which is sun. So it's that morning sun, the rising sun. So
That makes more sense than beer.
which possibly now I'm thinking that the Asahi company means rising sun. We should look that up too. I'm curious now to see if that's correct. And so that's the new first verse, well, relatively new first verse of the Sakura song. So now we have the complete Sakura song, and I promise I will sing it at some point in the near future for a bonus episode. So, Thomas, what do you think?
I quite like the song, actually. And the theory you have as well, it makes more sense why they would put it as a first verse, not a second verse, to like nail down like all the imagery and the links to everything else that was happening at the time, like you said. So I think it's a good theory. I think you're onto something there. So thank you for the song and thank you for that. Oh, we're on a main episode, so book recommendation time. We talked about Toriyama Seken briefly in the episode, so I'm going to recommend today a book known as the. It's a good title in that I pronounce it two different ways. So it's either the Japan Demonium or it's Japandemonium. I like both of the names, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I'm going to go with Japandemonium. This book is basically a collection of all the yokai encyclopedias of Toriyama Sekian. So it's printed in the traditional Japanese way, so from right to left, and they've reproduced all his images from his books for also you can see all the creatures throughout. Basically, the authors, so Hiroko Yoda and Matt Alt, they have translated all the notes that Toriyama Sekian wrote next to the creatures as well, so you can learn a bit about them through his eyes, but they've also included on each of the pictures a little bit of a story and history behind all the creatures. That is my recommendation for today. It's quite a big book. There's about 300 pages. There's hundreds and hundreds of different creatures for you to look at if you're interested. Today's book, Japandemonium Illustrated, the Yokai Encyclopedias of Toriyama Seken.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that recommendation.
Anyway, yes, that is at least everything for me for today. Oh, we should say again, so next week, episode 35, we're going to do the next little installment of the Shinto mythology. So we left it quite a lot of weeks ago now. I think it was even, was it before Christmas? Maybe.
Oh
Anyway,
my gosh.
so next week, yeah, well, I want to go back to Shinto mythology and carry on the story where we left off, where the sun goddess fled into the rock cave. And basically, we'll do the story about what happened and what the gods did to try and coax her back out of the cave. With all that out of the way, that is everything from me today.
And for me, thank you guys again for listening. And just one quick update from me, I am back home. So we are hoping to get the podcast out again every week. Thanks for your patience. I'm doing much, much better. A little bit more ways to go, but at least I'm home, back in my regular environment, and we really want to get you guys a new episode each week, and we'll try our best. And thanks for keeping with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you to everyone, and thank you for your patience. Like we said, obviously Heather's health came first, which is why we missed the episode, a past episode initially. But we're not gonna give this up. We will definitely get back on track for you all. I'm just happy that Heather's back home now and can get back to her normal everyday life. Welcome home, Heather. Welcome back to normality.
Thank you so much, Thomas. Normality as it is at this current moment in time.
Until next week, matane.
Matane.
If you've enjoyed the Japan Archives, please consider checking out historyofjapan.co.uk, a database we are making on Japanese history. You can also find the show notes for all our episodes here. If you're on Instagram, you can follow my account over at nexus_travels, that's NEXUS_travels.
We also have a Facebook and Twitter page, which you can find at Japan Archives. If you're interested in little slices of life in Japan, be sure to check out my website over at heatheroveryonder.com. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, have anything you'd love to hear about, head on over to historyofjapan.co.uk and send us a message.
If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to give us a rating and review over on iTunes. Thank you again for listening, guys. Until next time, bye.
Matane!